exciting. Not that you came to see me, I know that. But that is so great. He's here visiting his son, and we have people from Lincoln, Nebraska, and I saw a license plates out there that said South Dakota, right? We got some people. Oh, right here. Oh, these are my front row ladies. They're always smiling at me. Okay, just real quickly, I wanted to tell you that each of my presentations have been vetted by scientists. I know scientists in 4 branches of science, and this one, a professor of biology and physics at a secular college in Seattle watched this. And because I always want to make sure it's not me misreading something, because I purposely quote the evolutionists because I want it to be their words, but I want to make sure it's, still science. So this one was vetted by him, and he said he wished he could have a copy because he could show this because it parallels creation and evolution side by side and leaves it up to you to make a decision, and he felt it was a fair comparison, and he thought that this could be shown in a secular college. It wasn't biased. You can tell me what you think. Okay, so we're here. Let's go. Okay, dear Lord, thank you so much for us being here. Thank you, Lord, for giving us intellect, the intellect in our brains, for us wanting to discover and research and process and analyze so that we are thinking critically, we are thinking with the mind that you have given us, Lord, to prove all things. That's what's so important, and you warned us, told us, prove all things, because it all does lead back to you, Lord. Thank you. In your name, amen. Come on in, folks. We're going to get started. Okay, the Big Bang. Jesus invites us to reason together. Come, let us reason. The divine intellect is asking human intellect, come and reason with me, which is amazing. There's a thing called rational intelligibility, that we can do science. The mathematics is the language of the universe, and we understand it because we were made in the image of the mind that created that language. All right. Oh. Okay, this is the Life and Letters of Charles Darwin. This is what he said. With me, the horrid doubt always arises whether the convictions of man's mind, which has been developed from the mind of the lower animals, are of any value or at all trustworthy. Would anyone trust in the convictions of a monkey's mind? I think that's pretty good thing to be thinking about, because it suddenly hit him. Boy, how do we do science if we're just another step up from monkeys? Here's an atheist and philosopher, Thomas Nagel. This was the title of his book in 2012. The atheist voted it the most despised book of 2012, and here's why. Mind and Cosmos, Why the Materialist New Darwinian Conception of Nature is Almost Certainly False. And he's one of them. And he cannot believe how hated he is. And guess what the creationists said? Welcome, brother! They were so excited, and he's like, what an odd place to be found, I'm in the middle, and yet they're being so nice to me and the people that I was trying to encourage. The reason he wrote the book was to get them off the theory of Darwinian evolution and come up with something that actually makes sense. All right, so here's the history of evolution. In 1933, Georges Lemaitre, a Jesuit priest, astronomer, and physics professor, theorized the universe originated as a great cosmic egg, expanding outward from a primeval atom. The title Big Bang would come later. Here's the problem that the evolutionists say they have. Where did the original matter and energy come from that exploded into an entire universe? Fair question. At the top picture are stars, and when they are masked, that's the gray in the lower picture, there is this glow that they think is a cosmic microwave background that shows the Big Bang, but this is disputed among them. The others say, you know what, it's the radiation just from all the galaxies and stars out there. So that is debated. Here it is. Here's me explaining it. All right, here's another problem. Matter propelled from a central point would not allow for curvilinear motion, and yet solar systems, galaxies, and binary stars have curving orbits throughout the cosmos. So, again, I talk about my 4 brothers. If you had brothers like me, they love fireworks, and I think they're called M60s, M80s, whatever blows up mailboxes. I know they're horrible brothers. Anyways, when they would blow something up, all the parts would just go equally distributed. Nothing was going around, and that's what they're saying. If something exploded, everything should just be going straight out, not curving around. That doesn't make sense. Problem, galaxies would not draw close enough to interact if they were flung apart by the Big Bang. And this is a beautiful, it's called the antennae, interacting galaxies. They're just gorgeous. Here's another problem. Great chains of galaxies could not have formed within the Big Bang's time frame of 13.7 billion years, resulting in a constant temperature of 2.7 Kelvin above zero across the universe. So in other words, our universe is expanding too slowly to have this constant temperature all the way around. Because, okay, so picture this. Big Bang goes up, this is their thought, and all these parts go out, and then each part is evolving, and then they expand, and then they catch up with all the other pieces. So picture all these puzzle pieces are all scattered, and now they start, as they expand, they eventually come together, and that's why the temperature is the same. And they're saying what we're seeing now is too slow, that to make up for this universe that it has a constant temperature. Now look at the Virgo supercluster. It's center and a little bit to the right. We're one of those dots. And it's our galaxy is one of those dots, not our solar system. Galaxy. Jesus Christ, high priest and creator of astronomy and physics, claimed the universe originated with him when the Father said, "Let there be," and kaboom, Jesus made it happen. And there were no problems. Cosmologists can only project 0.01 seconds after the Big Bang's explosion about what might have happened. And they believe, because again, we constantly have to tweak, because the universe is expanding too slowly to account for the constant temperature, they now say that where it says tiny fraction of a second inflation, that it expanded faster than the speed of light. They're saying nature transcended its laws. Does nature ever transcend its laws? But that's what they have to say to make sense of it. Adam actually observed the new world 0.01 seconds after he was created, no projecting necessary. And this is the Creation Museum. Is it in Texas? It's somewhere in the south. Anyways, they have a creation museum. Per NASA's website, Universe 101 page, the following two ideas form the entire theoretical basis for Big Bang cosmology. I expected it to be far more complicated. Here's Einstein, whose hair defies gravity. I love his hair. Gravity is a distortion of space-time. He undid 200 years of Newtonian science. The guy he's great. And matter and radiation are uniformly distributed throughout the universe. So yellow equals galaxies, but look at all the dark blue spots between. The Big Bang says uniformity, and it's showing non-uniformity. Uniformity because it exploded, everything should be equal. There should be galaxies everywhere, and we have huge, vast, empty spaces where there's no galaxies, and you can see that. Look at they're clustered together, and then there's big open space. There should be just constant orange and yellow spots everywhere. Supernatural, this is the definition of supernatural, a manifestation or event attributed to some force beyond scientific understanding or the laws of nature. So keep that in mind. I'm going to quote from some scientists, and you tell me if they're talking about supernatural, which of course they don't believe in. Okay, problem. While this is NASA, the Big Bang can account for the existence of the cosmic microwave background, they believe that glow, and explain the origin of the light elements, it does not explain the existence of galaxies and large-scale structure. NASA's saying the Big Bang does not explain, it does not make sense with galaxies and large scale because it's not uniform. So it's beyond scientific understanding. Here's Rocky. As to what drove inflation, nobody knows. All the theories of inflation amount to proof that we don't have one good theory yet. And he's the Fermi, which is the gamma ray telescope up there. He's an astrophysicist. He says we don't even have a good theory. I agree with Rocky. This is Dr. George Efstathiou. He's Greek. And he said this scalar field permeates all of space and is responsible for causing space to expand faster than the speed of light. He's commenting on that. Wow, how can nature go faster than its laws? That's why I call it a cartoon of a theory, no substance, because we don't understand how inflation works in any fundamental sense. I mean, per God's website, Universe 101 page, the following two statements form the entire basis for creation cosmology. For he spoke and it was done, he commanded and it stood fast, and there were no cartoon theories, no problems. Big Bang expansion. We now know as of 2013 that the universe is flat with only a 0.4% margin of error. So the bottom picture is what we believe, and again, when I say we, the scientists believe that the universe, it's flat. It's not a saddle and it's not a sphere. A universe, but here's what they say, a universe as flat as we see today would require an extreme fine-tuning of conditions in the past, which would be an unbelievable coincidence. Because they can't say miracle or design or plan. It has to be magic, a coincidence. Yeah, we have to use other words. But they're saying it's unbelievable. It just, they just can't wrap their minds around it. Here's the problem. Problem with a flat universe. As our flat universe expands with increasing speed, a big rip will occur, causing everything to be torn apart. I know this looks like an upside-down pair of jeans being ripped. So look at, you see 60 million years before the big rip, and then look above that. 3 months before the big rip, our solar system breaks apart. So there's no sun, the planets are flung all over the place. But apparently, for time, Earth stays there, because 30 minutes before the big rip, now Earth explodes. So apparently Earth is out there without the sun and the other planets. It makes it. And then, of course, right before the big rip, the atoms are ripped apart. I don't know how they sleep at night. God's expansion. Who stretches out the heavens like a curtain and spreads them out like a tent to dwell in? God is expanding the universe. It's there. My hand stretched out the heavens. And there are no rips in God's curtains. Big Bang. The sun formed, cooled, raw material was flung off and revolved around it, forming a protoplanetary disk. Slowly, these grains settled together and collected into clumps, then chunks, and finally bodies large enough to exert their own gravity. So you notice we have the potato asteroid on the left, and it suddenly becomes a smooth sphere on the right. Two of the chunks collided, and what remained became our moon, or the world's largest bowling pin. Problem: each planet is different in composition. If they form from the same material, we'd expect them to be of the same substance. If they came from a cooling sun, they should all be made the same. They're not. Each planet's tilt is different. If they form from the same disk revolving around the sun, we'd expect their polar tilts to be the same. And you saw when we did the solar system yesterday, you saw that. Dust in space does not become solid bodies. Saturn's rings prove this. Each planet's moon is drastically different. Earth's own moon is far too large to be the result of a collision, and there is no geological evidence. Can you imagine the size of the hole in Earth if the moon was there and then came apart for such an enormous event? This was February 2016. Bigger problem. 3D modeling shakes up planet formation theory. Now that gas giants have been discovered, you saw exoplanets this morning, and so when they saw gas giants discovered orbiting their stars more closely than Mercury orbits our sun, the theory of how gas giants formed as a result of gravitational instability has been challenged. And then this very cool hip guy, Joe Barranco, he's an astrophysicist, he said, this is what he says, but 3D modeling has shown for the first time that turbulence prevents the dust. They thought turbulence from the cooling sun would cause everything to get together and have a gas giant to build it. But he said it prevents the dust from settling into the dense disk necessary for gravitational instability to work. These results defy the proposed solution of how planets are formed. What he found out, again, throws out what we think about planetary formation. See how there's all sorts of things going on, and it's not making sense. I'm going to put my glasses on here. I have double vision in my left eye, and I can feel my left eye starting to go in. They're all one of you. You don't have double heads anymore. Whew. Okay. Creation. Earth was formed first, and then the sun and moon were made as lights for the earth. And there were no flying chunks, no giant bowling pins, no problems. 2011 AD, using computer simulation, 2 scientists developed a new theory to explain the more mountainous terrain and 30 extra miles of crust on the far side of our moon. And think about that, 30 extra miles of crust. That is odd, on one side of the moon and not on the other. They have completely different topography. One theory proposed a smaller moon collided with our much larger moon, causing a pie-in-the-face effect. They named their theory the Big Splat. Remember, there's no creative naming department. The Big Splat. This was headline news. This was 2011. It said, Earth once had 2 moons. That was the headlines in our newspaper. Here it is. So here's the Big Splat, a new theory. So you see in the top left, there's a little blue orb headed for the moon. And then when it hits the moon on the top right, it starts to fall apart kind of like Jell-O. And then the bottom left, it's settling in, and now it's got that 30 extra miles of crust. Okay, now this is great. Dr. Paul Sputis, I really respect him. He's a lunar specialist, planetary scientist who specializes in the moon. And listen to what he says. All of the models proposed to date have a deus ex machina flavor. That means divine intervention. Okay, happened with Greek plays. They were bringing a machine with like an angel hanging off when there was an impossible situation to show that divine intervention was about to take place. And he's saying all of the models, all proposed to date, have that flavor. And science does not incorporate miracles into its explanations. So why are the near and far sides of the moon so different? We don't know. Now, what's ironic about this is Richard Dawkins, with his last debate with Professor or Dr. John Lennox, he said by having God in the equation with science, it stunts discovery. I don't know how much more stunted you can get with we don't know. God in the equation keeps the progress and the research going. I mean, look at Isaac Newton. When he discovered gravity, he didn't say, oh, well, then I don't need God now. Instead, he said, wow, how fascinating that he made it that way. See, God is needed. And here's a scientist admitting that without God, we're left with we don't know. Now that's stunted. 4004 BC, using real non-simulated activity, the chief scientist created one moon to orbit Earth in a synchronized manner every 29 and a half days. He made one side more mountainous, perhaps because it stabilized the moon's speed or tilt or rotation, or maybe he just liked how it looked. He named his creation the Lesser Light. And there were no splats from hurling pies. Evolution. As Earth's systems evolved, simple creatures climbed out of primordial ooze, mutated into other species, with man being a little higher than the apes. And in this picture, the chimp looks like he's got more going on than the guy holding the rocks thinking, what can I do with these rocks? And that's called a tetrapod that's believed to have crawled out of the slime. Here's the problems. There's no evidence of life emerging from non-living chemicals. That's a big problem. And isn't that beautiful? That's bacteria, those green chains. Cyanobacteria allows photosynthesis in plants. Bacteria really are beautiful when you look at them under a microscope. And I know the Midwest loves their jackalopes, but I hate to tell you, it's disputed. Outside the Midwest, people aren't buying it. Sorry. The fossil record does not contain undisputed transitional fossils proving one species evolved into another species. And this guy is really into it. He's got the stuffed head, the picture frame picture of the jackalope behind. All right, mutations have not been proven to be beneficial. This is an atheist evolutionary site at UC Berkeley. They actually have hundreds of pages for people interested in evolution, so you can go there and learn about evolution. And this is what they said. And yet when I was raised an evolutionist, I was taught that the mutations are beneficial, and that's why the organism progresses, because now something has happened to it, and it makes it easier to catch prey or to run or fly. And here they have found mutations have not been proven to be beneficial. They are random, not directed to benefit a species. And what you're looking at, so there's a normal eye, a fly head on the left, and then on the right, it's called the something gene. I forgot that. I want to say it's got an X, like phlox. Anyways, it's a gene, HOX, H-O-X, HOX gene. And the antennae that you see coming out of the fly's face actually become legs. It has legs coming out of its head. So not only does it affect its ability to fly when you're going to catch it, you know how they fly really fast, this one would not. And so they're saying that here's an example of a mutation that does not benefit the species, and yet this is a very typical mutation in flies. Here's another one. Mutations are essential to evolution. They are the raw material of genetic variation. Without mutation, evolution could not occur based on mutations. Mutations must change the DNA of reproductive cells, or they cannot be passed on to young. And this is still UC Berkeley, defined mutations as errors in copying the DNA, deleting or adding parts, or damage due to chemicals. Does that sound beneficial? Now, what's interesting is you see 3 non-resistant cockroaches and 1 resistant. There's 2 examples that evolutionists will use to give you an example of, evolution, of course it's happening, it's still happening today. So I'm spraying Raid on these cockroaches and kill them all, and after a while some start coming back, and they say, see, it's resistant to your insecticide. No, it isn't. And the other one is when we talk about getting a shot, vaccination for disease, and it becomes resistant to the medication. According to this site, there's always a minority within a population that is resistant, So it's like a placeholder. So the non-resistants, they die. So let's take the cockroach example. So I spray the cockroaches, they're dead, but there's a few that are resistant to raid, and they start populating. And as they have babies, they give birth to the non-resistant babies, because that's actually the normal of that population. Interesting. So in other words, and this is, you should, there's a place called discovery.org. It's in Seattle, and they sell DVDs by Illustra. Illustra is making quality design. So they're creation films of nature, and one of them is called The Icons of Evolution, and it's really what evolution has been teaching, and that they're all wrong now. And it's very good, and it talks about this. It shows a scientist in a lab, and he's putting the population in there that are supposed to be resistant and finding out they're very weak, and it's the non-resistant that are the really strong ones. These are just the placeholders to keep that organism going. So very different from what we've been taught. Here's Carl Sagan, back in the 70s. An evolving sun billions of years ago would have been 20% less bright, causing Earth to be a frozen wasteland, but evidence reveals a watery past with signs of life. It's called the faint young sun paradox. In the 1970s, Carl Sagan said, we've got a problem. Here it is. And nobody's ever dealt with it. Creation. As Earth's systems were created, man was made upright, able to reason, in God's image, and a little lower than the angels. And there was no ooze, no mutant facial legs, no problems. Simple species evolved into more complex species, as seen in Darwin's Tree of Life doodle sketch. And this is the only art or illustration in his book, Origin of Species. So it's this Tree of Life. And you can see we're on the same branch as the frogs. Problem. Nearly 300 researchers working in the US and Europe detailed the exact DNA sequence of 2 out of 5 chromosomes from a mustard plant. Nearly 8,000 genes populate chromosomes 2 and 4 of the wild mustard plant. Worms and flies fall short of matching mustard gene for gene. The mustard plant is more complex than a fly. There goes the Tree of Life. Because it's basically saying simple evolved into complex, and now that they're looking at genomes, they're finding out not so. Biologist Michael Savanin of UC Davis compared 2,000 genes common to humans, frogs, sea urchins, fruit flies, and nematodes. His findings, the problem was that different genes told contradictory stories. We've just annihilated the Tree of Life. And he wrote a book, Why Darwin Was Wrong About the Tree of Life. And this is New Scientist magazine. Creation. God said, let the earth bring forth the living creature according to his kind, and God saw that it was good. Each was designed for a purpose by the same creator, using the same elements. No doodle sketch necessary. What do today's scientists know about origin of life? Now, I'm going to quote top scientists. They have won awards in their field. This guy won the Priestley Medal in 2007, the highest award given by the American Chemical Society, and in 2011 he was voted the most influential chemist, living chemist in America. Most chemists believe, as do I, that life emerged spontaneously from mixtures of molecules in the prebiotic earth. How? I have no idea. Here's the most primitive cells may require at least, so the most primitive require at least several hundred different specific biological, macromolecules. How such already quite complex structures may have come together remains a mystery to me. This guy believes in intelligent design. He said, design just makes sense. Here's this guy, and he has a special interest in how religion and science interact. It has to be true, we really don't have a clue how life originated on Earth by natural means. Look at this, and he's Italian. He wrote a book, Where Do We Come From? Really? Nature hasn't given us the slightest clue about the origin of life? This is Balaam's donkey. He let me take his picture and quote him in here. For the invisible things of him from the creation of the world are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, even his eternal power and Godhead, so that they are without excuse. We are told that we can see his eternal power and Godhead. You look at DNA, it's 3 billion letters or a code with numbers. And when you look at a menu and it says like vegetable, those scratches on or ink on paper has meaning. It means vegetables. And so we know a mind is behind language. We understand that. We look at DNA and it's like, oh, random, mutation, just evolved. And it's the most complicated letter. The heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament shows his handiwork. These are from the Midwest. These are undulatus asperatus clouds, which means wavy turbulence. Day after day, utter speech. We have had radio telescopes listening for intelligence up there. We don't think there's intelligence down here, apparently. We think it's up there. We've been listening for over 30 years, and the scientists are saying we should have heard something by now. I wish they'd ask us. We'd say, we're here. We hear from heaven every day. Amen? Night after night shows knowledge. Have you not known? Have you not heard? Here's Moses. Has it not been told you from the beginning? It is he that stretches out the heavens as a curtain. I, the Lord, who makes all things, who stretches out the heavens all alone. There's no other God. It's me. Lift up your eyes on high and behold, who has created these things? It's not the what of evolution, it's the who of creation. So here's irreducibly complex organisms. I'm going to quote Michael Behe. Now, a church in Tillamook that I spoke at, they invited Michael Behe to speak at their church. Now, he's a Christian evolutionist. I was talking to a few of you earlier today. The landscape has changed. We have non-Christian creationists. Think about that. Jews and Muslims very much believe in six-day creation. And we have Christian evolutionists. Catholics believe that God used evolution to create. One of the synods of Lutherans believe that God may have used evolution to create. Presbyterians, I know, are evolutionists, and they believe in Jesus and the Word of God. And I guarantee when they get to heaven, we're going to have a lot of beliefs that we're not sure or clear about, and God's going to get to, Jesus will teach us. But we have Christian evolutionists and non-Christian creationists. So he was invited to their church, and they had hundreds of people every day. They had him speak for 5 nights. He wrote a book called Darwin's Black Box. Okay, here's Darwin. If it could be demonstrated that any complex organism existed which could not possibly have been formed by numerous successive slight modifications, which is evolution, my theory would absolutely break down. But I can find no such case. But Darwin could not see inside a cell. We can with electron microscopes. We can see, and it's been wondered if he would have written a different book. So here's Dr. Michael Behe. This is an example of what he says is an irreducibly complex organism. Big words that just means all the parts had to be together for this organism to work. He's an evolutionary scientist. He believes in intelligent design. He claims the flagellum, which is the tail, of one-celled prokaryotes are examples of irreducibly complex organisms. They believe prokaryotes were the first bacteria to exist because it does not have a nucleus. In his book, Darwin's Black Box, he explains these could not have evolved because each part had to be in place at the same time in order to benefit the species. So we're going to take a closer look. This is looking through a electron microscope. And listen to Evolution News and Views. The basis of flagellar assembly, and this is what connects the body to the tail, is so breathtakingly elegant and mesmerizing that the sheer engineering brilliance, if we have engineering brilliance, we must have a brilliant engineer, cannot be properly appreciated. Wow, and look at that. I mean, again, it's super complex. And here's an illustration. It requires the orchestrated expression of more than 60 genes just to move that tail. That's what that other scientist was talking about, how these simple-celled organisms are so complex. Okay, form and function. This little guy, I don't know if you have water ouzels here, do you? We have them back home. What they do is they inspire me to exercise because they do knee bends. And they stand on a rock and just keep doing this, and all of a sudden, bloop, they're in the water. And they can walk against the current. It's amazing. In the case of the water ouzel, this is Darwin, the acutest observer by examining its dead body would never have suspected its subaquatic habits. Wow. Is Darwin admitting a creature's remains might not accurately reveal its habits? Its form will not always reveal its function? That studying fossils might result in assumptions instead of facts? Sure sounds like that's what he was saying. So when diving, this has to happen when the bird goes underwater. Nasal flaps cover the nostrils. The lens of its eyes change shape to see underwater. Red blood cells start storing extra oxygen to stay submerged. Blinks 40 to 50 times per minute. Glands secrete waxy substance to waterproof the feathers. It walks on the bottom of streams despite fast currents. And you can see them. They're always in shallow streams. And they're walking along like there's no force. And yet, even as a human, when there's a forceful creek, you're kind of keeping your balance, and they just walk like there's nothing. Unique musculature for the wings to move in a swim motion. They don't fly. It's like this. Down covers the skin between the feathers, so when you separate the feathers, you don't see their skin. And it is the only aquatic songbird, and yet its feet are not webbed. If anything was going to evolve webbed feet, it would have been this little guy. So here's 1836. This is from a Natural History magazine. It says, talking about the water ouzel. This is the bird that has set the laws of gravity at defiance by breaking through general mandate that things lighter than water shall rise towards its surface and things heavier shall sink beneath it. It's admitting it defies the laws of gravity, defies the laws of what we believe as far as water. Here they knew it in 1836. The butterfly. According to the theory of evolution, DNA determines form, but butterflies use the same DNA for two completely different body plans. Different mouths, legs, eyes, stomach, brain connections, function, and purpose. We now know, of course, genes turn off and on, including in humans. And we can affect that how we think. It's amazing. We had 7 depression recovery seminars where we were, and a doctor is on a DVD that's giving the seminar, and then we have a local doctor there to facilitate. And this has been years, and he said, we're now knowing genes can turn on and off, and it can be by our behavior and our thoughts, and how important. Philippians 4:6, think on these things, gave a whole new meaning to that verse. The mantis shrimp, I love this little guy, size of my little finger. Look at those Google eyes. I mean, that's cute, right? The visual system of the mantis shrimp works more like a satellite sensor. They see color like no other animal on the planet. They have 16 photoreceptors for color, including UV and polarized light. Humans have 3. What evolved into it? What evolved from it? Nothing. It's on its own branch. Nothing sees like this little guy. In fact, when you have them in an aquarium, you can see the little hammers hanging in front of it. It actually cavitates. It breaks up the molecules of water. It's so fast, and it will crack your aquarium glass. I know. And they do that. They kill snails. So if they see a snail, they crack, and the snail's shell cracks, and it's all over for the snail. Here it is. The ecological and evolutionary factors that drove the development of such a singularly elaborate UV spectral tuning arrangement are poorly understood, which means we don't have a clue. This is Michael Bach, a biologist in University of Maryland in 2014. He's saying we do not understand how something could be so unique and there's nothing evolving from it, towards it. Amazing. Transitional fossils. Here's Darwin again. Why? If species have descended from other species by fine gradations, little steps, do we not everywhere see innumerable transitional forms? He's right. We're all the halfway there. So Archaeopteryx, reptile to bird transitional fossil, believed, is 150 million years old, only 7 found. This has already been thrown out. So I'm going to share with you what they believe, but it's already been disproved. Things happen, that's how things happen. They have an idea, they make a big deal about it, and then they find something and they're wrong. All right, feather at a dig site seen through electron microscope. And they believe, in China, they have these beautiful sandstone, and it's like opening pages, and these fossils are kept perfectly in the sandstone. So they found this feather, and they said, Archaeopteryx, 150 million year old raven-sized dinosaur, they believe the feather came from Archaeopteryx. I think a crow was just flying over the dig site, and a feather fell down, but they think it belonged to the dinosaur. It had black feathers on its wings that were structurally identical to those of modern birds. All right, so the reptilian connection are its teeth. So if you can see its teeth and its head, and then it's got a flat sternum between the 2 front wings, the flat bones there. And then look at the wing claws. So see the claws at the end of the wing. There's 2 or 3 of them there. That's what they believed that made it half reptile, half bird, and they believed that the dinosaurs as reptiles evolved into birds. And I'm going to show you how it was completely dismantled, and that's why it no longer is believed. So, any similarities in birds today? Both wild and domestic geese have serrated structures called tomia inside the bills, so they have teeth. As do 30 other families of birds. Boy, do I see hummingbirds differently, such as kites, shrikes, ducks, and hummingbirds. They have little teeth. Penguins have a variation of sharp spines in their mouths and on their tongues. Ooh, yeah, that fish isn't coming up. Birds in the ratite family have flat sternum, so you have kiwi. Is that a cassowary, emu, or what's the other? Rhea. Is it a rhea? Anybody know? Okay, one of those. And ostriches. But they also have wing claws, like this emu. And here's the most amazing. The Watson is born with wing claws. Evolutionists believe it lived 36 million years ago, and of course it's still alive now. It lives along the Amazon. It smells like manure. It makes a sound like a wheezing cougher that's been smoking too many cigarettes. Nobody wants to eat it because it stinks. When its nest is threatened, it actually abandons its babies, and its babies jump into crocodile-infested river below. And then it uses those little claws to climb back up to the nest. You can watch it on YouTube. Look up a Watson. It's a pretty interesting bird, big bird. This species is unlike any other bird, is in its own family and suborder, and guess what? Closely resembles Archaeopteryx. Confucius ornis was found in the same strata as Archaeopteryx, but is more primitive. It's more primitive, but there's no teeth. If it was more primitive, it should look more like a reptile. Hundreds of specimens found with feathers from 161 million years ago. Feathers lasted that long. This is Dr. Chatterjee. He's called the fossil whisperer. He's from India, and he can look at strata, geological columns, and say, we're going to find dinosaurs right there. He does. He's amazing. He found a bird fossil 75 million years older than Archaeopteryx in Texas, but Proto-Avis is more evolved, not less. And what does that mean? If it's correct, the first birds lived at the same time as the earliest dinosaurs. This would require major rewriting of the evolutionary history of birds and dinosaurs alike. Here's dinosaurs in decay. T-Rex, a favorite of our kids, believed to have been 20 foot tall, 40 foot long, and lived 65 million years ago. We've actually found some complete skeletons. But a fossil named B for Bob, Bob is the man that found this particular skeleton, held a few surprises. Stretchy soft tissue in Bob's leg bone proved this T-Rex had not completely decomposed after 65 million years. Mary Schweitzer, she's a molecular paleontologist who made the discovery. She actually broke the bone in her, she was going through the skeleton, and she just thought, I wondered, she broke it, and there was the blood. And this is what she says: finding these tissues in dinosaurs changes the way we think about fossilization, because our theories of how fossils are preserved do not allow for this. There you go. Doesn't make sense. And now this guy is called a paleontologist rock star. If you've ever wondered what rock stars look like in the dinosaur discovery world, here's Tom Holtz. He's a rock star. He says her work is showing us we really don't understand decay. Use critical thinking. Is that a true statement? We are on Earth, and I ask kids this in school. If I throw a banana peel out of my driveway on a sunny day, what happens to it? They all say, it turns black, it rots. Okay, so that's not true. We do understand decay. We are the planet of decay. We get it. There's a lot of basic stuff in nature that people just make assumptions about. So I disagree with him. We do understand decay. So I went looking for somebody who could tell me how long DNA can last before it starts decomposing. And here's a guy, he's an expert, executive editor of Science for National Geographic magazine. DNA degrades over time, so usually very little remains in a bone tens of thousands of years old. Forget 1 million years old. Forget 65 million years old. Tens of thousands, it's going to be gone. Red blood cell from B. rex. So what they took it out and looked at the DNA, and they compared it to today's animals. And what did this blood sample reveal? Yesterday's T-Rex is today's chicken. If you've ever wondered what that leg bone of a T-Rex tasted like to Cro-Magnon man, it was chicken. And so because of this, my husband and I watched the documentary. They've completely revamped T-Rex. It now has feathers. Those little arms are little wings. And it now lives in little family groups. And it does this. And it's got little babies clucking around. Totally different than the movies where we grew up with, where it's the monster that's killing everything. Isn't that funny? All right, further discoveries in the past year revealed soft tissue in Bob was not a fluke. They found collagen in a 600,000-year-old mastodon, remember it's in quotes, and soft tissue in a 300,000-year-old woolly mammoth. So I'm going to let you tell me, what did the mastodon's tissue reveal about its closest relative? Take a wild guess. Exactly. Molecular machines within cells. In his book, Signature in the Cell, Stephen Meyer explains how molecular machines prove design. Stephen Meyer changed today's science. He brought in information. Before him, it was, we only need matter and energy. And so evolutionists could say, well, it just took matter and energy and things evolved. And then he's brilliant, and he runs a Discovery Institute in Seattle. And it's a great place to buy, like I said, design creation DVDs. I mean, we should be showing those to our kids at home. I hope they're showing them at school. It's fantastic, and they're quality made. They're competing with, National Geographic films, and they show, one's called Flight, one's called Metamorphosis, and I mean, it's just beautiful. It shows how creatures, it was made with that purpose, and it's just beautiful. Anyways, what was I going to say? When he brought in information, he said, no, we had to have information. The DNA, it had to be there for anything to form or do anything. And so now you're hearing evolutionists bringing up information, which of course is their dilemma. So here we go, mitochondria, remember your 7th grade science. See the things, they're the energy powerhouses for the cell. Okay, is the sound thing on? Because we're going to watch one of the molecular machines inside the cell. It has an intro, so here it is. That's very nice music. Now these are the mitochondria, these purple cocoon-looking things.
It's been called one of the wonders of the molecular world, an amazing nanoscale machine.
Can you turn down a little?
ATP synthase is a high-tech micromolecular power generator inside the cells of your body. It generates adenosine triphosphate, or ATP, an energy molecule that provides fuel that every one of your cells needs to function. Without this fuel, your cells will cease operation, and so will you. ATP synthase works like a rotary engine. The barrel-shaped rotator is composed of 10 to 15 protein parts called subunits. The rotator spins around, transmitting mechanical energy into the drive shaft of the machine, which helps make ATP. This drive shaft has a specially placed bump that opens and closes parts as the drive shaft spins around. This bump opens special protein subunits on the bottom of the machine. When the bottom subunits open, a spent energy molecule called adenosine diphosphate, or ADP, enters the machine. The mechanical motion causes the ADP to bind with an additional phosphate group, creating the ATP energy molecule. And the ATP drifts off into the cell, ready to power some biomechanical reaction. The ATP synthase machine has many parts we recognize from human-designed technology: a rotor, a stator, a drive shaft, and other basic components of a rotary engine. The ATP synthase is one of thousands of elegantly designed molecular machines inside your cells that make your life and all known life possible. ATP synthase, an example of intelligent design.
Okay, don't you love ATP? The cell would stop, and so would we. Evolution's dilemma. Let's say you found a CD out in the woods, or a DVD, and you want to see what's on the DVD. So you need a DVD player, but the instructions to build a DVD player is on the DVD. That's the dilemma. DNA is needed to make proteins. Proteins are needed to read DNA. Which came first? Here's Richard Dawkins on the left. The machine code of the genes is uncannily computer-like. I mean, even if you didn't believe in God, you still have to credit the complexity of DNA. Bill Gates, DNA is like a computer program, but far, far more advanced than any software ever created. And you see the code for computer on the left, the O1, and the ATGC, that's the code for the DNA. Here's a software engineer for Biologic Institute in Seattle. It's like we're looking at 8.0 or 9.0 versions of design strategies that we have just begun to implement. When I see how the cell processes information, it gives me an eerie feeling that someone else figured this out before we got here. Okay, so this is going to be, here's another one. This is DNA in the cell. These are actually the several machines that process DNA in your cell. His book, Signature in the Cell, is 500 pages, and it just blew everyone away.
In 1957, Francis Crick first proposed that chemicals called bases along the spine of the DNA molecule function as alphabetic characters in a written language or digital characters in a machine code. This animation shows how this digital information directs protein synthesis. First, a large protein complex separates the tightly wound strands of the DNA to prepare it to be copied. During this process of transcription, a protein complex called a polymerase produces a single-stranded copy of the original instructions. Here we see this copy, a messenger RNA molecule, being constructed inside the polymerase as individual bases are positioned and added to the growing strand. Now we see the polymerase in action from the outside as it spits out the messenger RNA transcript. Next, this RNA transcript approaches and passes through a molecular machine called the nuclear pore complex, an information recognition device that controls the flow of information in and out of the cell's nucleus. Now we see the genetic assembly instructions on the messenger RNA approaching and arriving at a two-part chemical factory called a ribosome, the site of protein synthesis. As the messenger RNA transcript passes through the ribosome, the process of translation begins. During translation, a mechanical assembly line builds a specifically sequenced chain of amino acids in accord with the instructions on the transcript. These amino acids are transported from other parts of the cell by molecules called transfer RNAs, which link specific sequences of bases to corresponding amino acids. The sequential arrangement of the amino acids determines the type of protein constructed. When the construction of the chain is complete, it is transported to a barrel-shaped machine that helps fold it into the precise shape required to perform its function.
I would like a folding machine in my home. Folds my laundry.
After the chain is folded into a protein, it is released into the outer cytoplasm to do its job in the cell.
Wow, all that in your cell. Whoa. I love all the little machines. It's copying and translation and transfer and the folding and all that in your cell. When DNA's bases, so like I said, this is a 3 billion letter word. When DNA's bases were randomly assigned musical notes, they wanted to see if there's any patterns. So they randomly assigned, so ACTG, so A will be do, re, and we'll put a violin there, and T will be mi, fa, and we'll put a trumpet there. I mean, just randomly assigned musical notes. The result was expected to be disjointed sounds, right? They wanted to see if there's any pattern. Go ahead and play beta globin. Now remember, this isn't what's happening in your cell. It's assigning random notes and instruments to these letters in the DNA. And you tell me if you hear a pattern. Amazing. Okay, play accordion now. So this is a different DNA in a different cell. Assign different notes, different instruments. It's called genetic music. You can buy an album of them. All of them have a pattern. So go ahead and turn it off. Thank you. Like I said, you guys have a great AV system here. What do you think? There was randomly assigned by humans, and it still had a pattern. All of creation, including music and poetry, is built on mathematics, which applies to even the tiniest molecules. Wow. The golden ratio Fibonacci sequence, that's the number that is the sum of the two previous numbers. So 1 is the sum of 0 and 1, 2 is a sum of 1 and 1. Fibonacci was an Italian mathematician, and he saw the mathematics, the language of nature. And you see the galaxy, the bones in our hand, the petals of pine cones. I mean, you can apply it, and it shows that there is a mind. Mathematics is a language. There is a mind behind that language. Here's Richard Dawkins, and he's going to, this is the last debate he did. It's been a few years with Professor John Lennox, who is also an Oxford professor. So they work together at Oxford. And he's going to tell us what evolution does not explain, okay? And I also wrote it down because it's sometimes...
Now, the cosmos hasn't yet had its Darwin.
Cosmos.
We don't yet know how the laws of physics came into existence, how the physical constants came into existence. And so we can still say, is it a freak accident or was it designed?
Well, I find that unconvincing because even if you accept the whole evolutionary paradigm, it depends on there being a fine-tuned universe. And that fine-tuned universe raises in itself very big questions as to the origin of the universe. Evolution doesn't deal with that.
No, it doesn't.
Nor does it deal with the origin of life.
No, those are separate points.
Okay, evolution does not explain the cosmos, laws of physics, physical constants, origin of life. What does it explain? What's left? I know when I heard this, I was just amazed. Physical constants are speed of light, charge of an electron, gravity. It's the constants that we know are always the same. Evolution does not explain any of those. And this is Richard Dawkins admitting that. And yet, for people that are evolutionists just because they believe, they don't research, they don't know this. They think evolution explains it all. It's just, we've got to study. So let's see who does explain the cosmos, the laws of physics, the physical constants, and the origin of life. If we go to Scripture, you alone are the Lord, you have made the heavens, the heaven of heavens with all their hosts, the earth and all that is on it, the seas and all that is in them. You give life to all of them. For by him were all things created that are in heaven and that are in earth, visible and invisible. And that's they call it a little water bear at the bottom. It has been found to exist in space. It can exist without water, without air. They think for centuries. I think it's called a tardigrade. Yeah. I just think it's so cute. It looks like a guy in a bad plastic suit, right? With this little... And he is before all things, and by him all things consist. This word for consist is only used one time in Scripture, and it's used here. It's synestemi, a Greek word. It means to place together by way of composition or combination, to unite parts into one whole. Do you think that's atoms? Do you think that's molecules? I mean, sure sounds like it to me. So says Jehovah, who gives the sun for a light by day, the laws of the moon and the stars. There's our laws of physics, the laws of science and nature for a light by night. Thus says the Lord, if I have not appointed the ordinances, the laws of heaven and earth. He made the laws of nature. He made the laws of heaven and earth. O Lord, how many are your works? Each of these creatures is tiny, and yet look at how beautiful and how detailed they are. That little seahorse is only 10 inches. The blenny, I think, is 5 inches. That little blue dragon sea slug is 1 inch long. And then the little octopus is only 3 inches. Little coconut octopus. In wisdom have you made them all. In wisdom. Not mutation, not random chance, not I guess I'll try this. In wisdom have you made them all. The earth is filled with your riches. Directed creation or undirected chance. Design purpose or random mutations. Involved divine intelligence or evolved brainless bacteria. Know that the Lord, He is God. It is He who has made us and not we ourselves. And I think for me, when I was an evolutionist, we decided how we were made and the manner we made ourselves. And He says, He has made us and not we ourselves. Oh, dear Lord, thank you so much for, again, taking us into this chapter of your book of creation and reminding us, you truly do turn the counsel of the unbelieving, you turn it upside down, Lord, and you show you are a mighty God and your evidence is strong. And may we study it, Lord, so we can be those strong advocates, strong witnesses for you as our Creator. And Lord, I lift up every person here. I ask that you give them that strength and confidence and courage that they will go out from here and testify that there is nothing to be ashamed of. You are the Creator, and it is the logical, rational. It is what makes sense. It is evident everywhere. In your name, amen. Thank you. Tomorrow morning will be for ladies, but also for the guys who love their ladies. Oh, perfect.